Hey, good morning, Darrell, and Merry Christmas.
Hey, good morning to you. Merry Christmas as well.
Hey, I am glad that we get to do this and we get to provide an opportunity for people to worship in the midst of the other things that they do on Christmas morning. Before we get into worship, what is your favorite thing to do on a Christmas morning? What's your tradition?
Well, if all went according to plan, we pick up Fritz's on Christmas morning, and you have to kind of put a reservation in for
I was
those.
going to say, are they
Yeah, so that's
open on Christmas morning or
no, no,
Christmas
no.
Eve?
You got to pick them up like Christmas Eve.
Okay, gotcha.
So we'll probably go out early Christmas Eve. My mom will come over, and we'll have coffee and Fritz's,
Mm,
and then the kids can do their stockings.
mm.
And we don't let them come down until Mindy and I get down first because we like to see them come down the stairs. It's kind of her tradition as well, and see their reaction coming down the stairs and seeing the presents under the tree. That's
Yeah.
something I look forward to. How
Okay.
about you?
Cool. We like to have breakfast together. So this has changed over the years, but now we have breakfast together. It used to be like, got to do the presents first, and now there's a little bit more self-control. So we eat breakfast. I'll probably make pancakes. And then we do, so how do you do presents? We do presents like one person at a time. Everybody watches each person. We go around. How do you do?
Yeah, we do it the same way. I like to kind of savor the moment. Like, you see some video movies and people just rip and shred, and in 10 minutes it's over. I'm like, no, I want this to just savor. So we like, usually one person wears the Santa hat and they pass the gift. It's all right, Brooke, this is your turn. We all watch ooh and ah when she gets her gift. And then Jenna or the next person in line.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, right. That's good. We have a
How about
designated.
Dave? What was your favorite present as a kid growing up?
I just had this conversation recently. My most memorable present was I wanted a camera really bad, like my first camera, and it was a 110. Like if their kids listening, like they're like, what does that mean? What is what is film? Anyway,
Right.
but anyway, I wanted a camera, and so it was back in the day. I think Kodak had this byline, marketing thing that was like open me first, so that then you could take pictures of other things. So I wanted a camera, and then I had this one package that said open me first, and so I was like, oh, that's it, and it was. So I got my camera, and I got a little like fake leather case for it, and I carried that around. And
Nice.
yeah. Anyway, what about you?
Oh, that's awesome. So you're a photographer then? You're
No,
amateur photographer?
no, not really.
Probably for me, I had longed for a drum set. I first was beating on the pots and pans. And no mother wants to give a kid a drum set because they know what comes with that, the noise of it. So I thought this was a Christmas, and I came down and I didn't see it under the tree. And I opened the last present, was a tiny little box, like almost a jewelry box. And I'm like, kind of like Ralphie in the Christmas story. He didn't get the BB gun. And I opened this little box, and here it was, a drum key, which tightens the drum head. My mom's like going to the other room. And especially now with my dad have passed, I walk into the room and my dad's sitting there behind this Ludwig orange sparkle, which I wish I kept it because it's probably a value today, like a Buddy Rich drum set. And my face was, wow! And my dad captured that picture. That was my favorite moment as a kid with a gift that I really wanted.
Oh, that's cool. And look where it's gotten you.
Yeah.
Like a career musician.
It was good.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That was fun.
Well, let's do some worship here.
Yeah.
We've been talking for the month about expecting Jesus to come, looking forward to it, and now we get to celebrate that he's come. So we'll sing Joy to the World. There is a lyric sheet online for you to follow along with the words. May not need the words to Joy to the World, but then Darrell's going to lead us in another song following the devotional that I share, and you might need the lyrics for that. So if you want to pause for a moment, go print that out. Then you'll have those available to follow along, sing along. Darrell, why don't you lead us in Joy to the World?
Pleasure. Thanks.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare nature sing. Joy to the earth, the Savior reigns. The men their song employ, while fields and floods, rocks, hills and plains repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders, wonders of his love, and wonders, wonders of his love. Amen. All right, Dave's now going to teach us from Matthew chapter 2.
Thank you, Darrell. It is good to celebrate that Jesus has come, and it's appropriate to celebrate with worship. We know that not everyone worships Jesus. Some people reject him. Some just ignore him. For some, the Christmas season is about everything but Jesus, which is really sad because those people are missing how beautiful Jesus is, how beautiful his love is, how filling his presence is. Those people are missing the life, the real life that only he offers. There are three basic responses to Jesus: to reject him, to ignore him, or to worship him. These responses are not new. They go all the way back to his first coming. We're going to look at these briefly this morning. If you can, turn to Matthew 2 in your Bible or on your app. We've been looking, if you've been with us this month, we've been looking at Matthew 1, which tells us about Jesus' birth. And then Matthew 2 tells us what came after his birth. So as we read, I want you to listen for three groups of people and three different responses that they have to Jesus. And the question for us this morning is, which is your response? I'm going to read starting in verse 1 of Matthew 2. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So there's three groups here. Actually, the first is not a group. It's a single person, but that's King Herod. The second group is the wise men. The third is the priests and the scribes, who I'm just going to refer to this morning as the religious leaders. So each one of these groups responded very differently when they heard that Jesus was born. Let's start with the wise men. What did they do? Well, we know they traveled from the east. Estimates range that it may have taken them anywhere from a number of weeks to actually multiple months, depending on where exactly they traveled from. And keep in mind that they were not riding in cars. They were certainly not flying in planes. They were riding camels, or maybe even walking. And I'm thinking, if they were riding camels, like, I've never ridden a camel, they don't look terribly comfortable. So yeah, that's a long time. And a trip like that would have been very, very expensive for them to make. Why did they do this? I mean, why would they have traveled all this way at all that expense? Well, verse 2 tells us, it gives us an answer to that question. They came to Herod saying, "Where is he who has been born king of the Jews?" They were curious. I mean, they saw the star. They said, "We saw a star when it rose, and we've come to worship him." So they were curious about this king, and they wanted to meet him, and they wanted to worship him even. I mean, they knew that this was no ordinary person. And so they actually did worship him when they found him. If we skip down to verse 9, it says, "After listening to the king, they went on their way, and behold, the star that they had seen when it rose went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh." So this is pretty dramatic. I mean, here you have grown men. We don't know exactly how many. Of course, the song says we three kings of Orient are, but we really don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us how many there were. It tells us there were three gifts, but not how many men there were. But what we know is they have to be grown men, and they're seeking out this baby. And then when they find him, they're falling down in worship, and they're offering gifts. There's tremendous meaning in each of these gifts. We could spend a lot of time on that. We won't spend a lot of time this morning, but gold, of course, would be appropriate for a king. Frankincense could have been kind of a healing kind of thing, or it could have been referring to incense and the fact that Jesus would be our great high priest, because incense was used in worship. And then myrrh was an embalming substance and was used to embalm the dead. And so it foretold the fact that he would be king, that he would be a priest, and that he would die for us. So a lot of meaning in all of those. But beyond just the meaning there, these would have been very expensive gifts. These would have been among some of the most expensive substances that were available in that day. So they came, they traveled, they gave gifts at great personal expense to themselves. And they did that because they believed that Jesus was worthy of worship. So that's the wise men, how they responded to Jesus. How did King Herod respond? Well, let's read it again in verse 3. When Herod the king heard from the wise men, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. He was not excited about Jesus. He was troubled. Herod responded with insecurity. He did not like all of this talk about another king on the scene. I mean, history tells us that Herod was very paranoid, very protective of his power. He even had members of his own family killed when he thought that they might be threatening to take over his throne. So Herod did not want Jesus or anyone else displacing him from his seat of power. And honestly, if we're honest, sometimes we are like that. We don't necessarily want Jesus or anyone else telling us what to do, trying to call the shots in our life. We want to call our own shots. Sometimes we are insecure in that way, and we're trying to maintain our power. So Herod was insecure, and he asked the third group of people where Jesus was born. That was the religious leaders. In verse 4, it says, Herod assembled all the chief priests and scribes of the people, and he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So the religious leaders answered Herod's question. They told him where the Messiah was to be born, Bethlehem. And then what did they do? Nothing. They responded with indifference. Herod responded with insecurity. They responded with indifference. I mean, imagine this. I mean, God's people have been waiting for the Messiah for hundreds, some for thousands of years. And Bethlehem is only 6 miles away from Jerusalem. And there is no record here that these religious leaders even took that short trip just to check things out. I mean, you would think that because they loved the scriptures so much, and they no doubt knew the prophecies backwards and forwards, they would at least go and check this out and see what these wise men, I mean, they traveled weeks, maybe even months to come. They couldn't even take, these religious leaders couldn't take like a 2-hour walk to check out what might be there. It is here's the warning for us. It is possible to love the Bible and to learn about Jesus, but not really want to know Jesus himself. So it's Christmas and Jesus has come. And the question is, will you and I respond to Jesus out of our hangups? Will we respond with insecurity like King Herod? Will we say, I want to be king of my own life and I don't want anybody moving in on my turf? Or will we respond with indifference like the religious leaders? We may like learning about God, but we don't want to get too close to Jesus. Will we respond out of our hangups, or will we respond to Jesus' holiness? When we realize Jesus' perfection and his holiness, the more we recognize his perfection and his holiness, the more our hangups fade into the background. That's one of the beautiful things about being in relationship with God. Jesus is worthy of our worship, which necessarily involves sacrifice on our part, like the wise men. It involves giving to him. I mean, God so loved the world that he gave to us, and it is appropriate for us to give back to him in worship. So we give up out of our resources to serve his purposes. We are to give up behavior if it goes against his will. We are to give up being in charge of our life and to recognize him as our king. So the question for you and me today on Christmas, really for every day, is how will you worship him? And here's a suggestion. The more time you and I spend thinking about his holiness, just dwelling on how perfect he is, how beautiful he is, the more we think about his holiness, the more our hangups will fade and have less influence and control over the way that we respond to him. Darrell is going to close us now with a song of worship. It's called Christmas Offering. And I want to just encourage you to make this chorus your prayer, that I bring an offering of worship to my King. I hope that you will think about this and sing along with Darrell.
Over the skies of Bethlehem appeared a star, while angels sang the lowly shepherds. 3 wise men seeking truth traveled from afar, hoping to find the child from heaven. And falling on their knees, they bow before the humble Prince of Peace. I'm bringing an offering to you. Sun cannot compare to the glory of your love. There is no shadow in your presence. No mortal man would dare to stand before your throne, before the Holy One of heaven. It's only by your love, and it's only through your mercy, Lord, I come. I bring an offering of worship to my King. No one on earth deserves the praises that I sing. Jesus, may you receive the honor that you're due. Oh Lord, I bring an offering to you. I bring an offering of worship to my King. No one on earth deserves the praises that I sing. Jesus, may you receive the honor that you're due. Oh Lord, I bring an offering to you. Oh Lord, I bring an offering to you. Oh Lord, I bring an offering to you. I bring an offering to you. Sing, we bring an offering. We bring an offering to you. Amen. Merry Christmas, Grace Point.
Thank you, Darrell, for leading us. I'm really glad that all of you took time today to worship. It's very appropriate because Jesus is worthy of our worship. I also know many of us in the coming week will have some extra time. A lot of us have some time off of work. I want to encourage you to use some of that extra time to spend a little more time with the Lord in the morning. I know there's many days where I wish I had more time to just relax in his presence, to just spend time in his word. And then I have to get moving. I have to get into the productivity at the day. While you have some extra time on your hands, I encourage you to use some of that to just have some unhurried, unrushed time with the Lord. And then next Sunday, I want to encourage you to come back and to worship in person at Grace Point. We are looking forward to our New Year's Day service, which will be at 10:30. One service only at 10:30. We have a special time planned of some prayer and worship again to kick off the new year. Hope you have a wonderful Christmas, a wonderful week, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Sunday.